o'clock. I'll call the work session to order. Item number 1 is the 2023 Enterprise Fund budgets. Shitty.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we're going to have our first look at the 2023 Enterprise Fund budgets, and we're just going to jump right in. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about the big utility projects that are on the agenda for 2023. The first one is the generator for wells 5 and 6, and this is coming out of the water fund. These are new wells that will be added to the city's infrastructure. Their combined capacity for the wells is around 1,600 gallons per minute. Having an on-site generator would provide little to no disruption to the water's system, and the cost is about $240,000 as of right now. The second project is PRV replacements. This is for the Mount Hope Road pressure reducing valve, which separates the intermediate pressure zone. I think there's other PRV replacements that Public Services has in this $200,000 as well. They just haven't called those out, but as we know that we want to make sure that we're replacing these PRVs before they fail. So I think just analyzing those, making sure that we are determining which ones need to be replaced to avoid failure before that happens. Third, the Public Services Storage Building, as well as the Turnout Addition. So coming from the water and sewer accounts, funds, excuse me. So this would be preparing the architectural and construction drawings. This would be right now a 9,600 square foot pre-engineered steel building. That's for the public services part of it. The turnout gear, I believe, would be an add-on for on the south end for their turnout gear, like locker room. So just for the construction drawings, the architectural planning, we're planning about $108,000 for this.
And that would be paid back. So it would function as an interfund loan, and then we pay back your project funds once the city moves forward with the project.
So for enterprise revenues and expenditures, here I kind of just laid out the total revenues with the total expenditures. So for 2022 budget to 2023 budget, I lumped the totals for water, sewer, and storm. So you can see for water, we're looking at a total revenue increase of 15%. Sewer, we're kind of almost level there. And then stormwater, we're actually trying to, or stormwater, there's less revenue coming in 2023. We're also scaling back, we're trying to scale back a little bit on that stormwater account in general. And then if you look at the expenditures down below, those are going up in the water fund by 20%, 3%, and then 3% for stormwater.
What is causing the stormwater expenditure or revenue to come down?
I think it's just the area charges. We're not planning on as many area charges for 2023.
Okay.
So area charges are charged per acre.
Okay.
And they're
versus like an individual.
They're development based, and so they're subject to kind of a roller coaster effect. Where connection fees, you're gonna typically get a certain amount of homes built, but in order to take down a development property, that it's hard to kind of plan when that exactly is going to happen. So sometimes we'll end up getting double the amount that we anticipate just because 2 80-acre parcels developed.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it'll slip and you'll get none because they couldn't get their final plat, and it ended up happening in the following year.
Okay, that's a really good question. So if we're looking at cash balances, the 2021 are the actual balances from the audit. I highlighted the water fund because that cash balance includes bond proceeds from the water treatment plant that hadn't been paid out yet, so it's a little inflated is what I'm trying to say there. And we try, enterprise funds cash target, what we try to do there is we want our fund balance to be half of our operating expenses for a year, plus 1 year of our upcoming debt payments, and our average capital purchases. So that's what we're kind of trying to get to for our cash balance. And I'll just say that we're there with our capital, with our enterprise funds, excuse me. So we are there with those. And that's what we look at when we do our long-term plan, is meeting those cash balances. That's why we do the long-term plan. Do we need to raise our rates to meet those cash balances, our needs for operating? And so, yes?
When were the expenditures added to that equation? I thought it was just 1.5 was our number we were looking for. Our full fund plus a half a year in order to balance. I didn't know that we added the expenditures in there as well.
That's always been, it's 1 year of debt and then 6 months of operating, is that what you said?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's been pretty standard.
Yeah, but then what else was added in there?
The average capital purchases
Okay.
for the long-term plan
Okay,
is
okay,
kind of what we do. Yep.
got it.
Yeah. So our projected cash balance at the end of this year is what you see there on the right. It's 5.4 million, 1.9 million, and 1.5 million. Here I've outlined the water debt service for 2023, and then at the top line, I've highlighted that the PFA loan for the water treatment plant the first time is going away, so that's not the new one. And so it's just over $1 million, and will all be in the budget, obviously. So I've highlighted the maturity on all of those on payments.
Excuse me, Lynn, can you
Yep,
go back to that?
Absolutely.
So it was talked about at a very high level in the long-term financial plan, but I think it bears repeating, and we'll get into this under one of my update items, but there's a relationship between these bond payments and what part of it comes from connection fees and what part of it comes from the users, and so they're set up to be funded for the most part through connection fees, and that under the theory that the users have already contributed to connection fees, but ultimately if you don't get your connection fees in, that money will have to be transferred to users. Now the council's done a very good job of monitoring connection fees. If you remember when we first started the construction of the water treatment plant, there were some figures in there for connection fees that the council just struggled with because they were just so high, and so caused the engineering team and Chad's team to kind of go back to the drawing board, redesign the project, but just kind of wanted to highlight kind of the relationship between connection fees and operating fees, because as the city continues to develop, I think that's going to become more of a reoccurring issue for you to consider in different circumstances.
Here is our sanitary sewer debt service. So we don't show anything falling off anytime in the near future for this, but it's a relatively smaller figure for the sanitary sewer.
Lynn, I'm sorry, are these amounts annual debt payments?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So then there's a line item in our budget that we put this on. Yep. And then here's our stormwater. So if you can recall back to my budget for the stormwater, almost a lot of the expense is the stormwater debt payment. All right, moving on. You guys have seen this. I have outlined this before. It comes from the long-term financial plan, proposed utility rates for 2023. These are called out in our long-term plan. Water, sewer, storm, 3%, 3%, and 5%. This is all to support the operations of the enterprise funds in the future. So this is what we're proposing for 2023. So I have compared the base rates as well as the usage rates for water, sanitary sewer, and then the storm water. And then as well as the connection fees, this is what Brent was talking about before. These would go up at the same rate as the usage rates went up. And then these are the fees that are paid with the building permit application or final plat. So 2023 fees are laid out on the right-hand side. These would all be approved with any sort of fee schedule that we would approve in the future, or you would approve, I mean. So I've also shown this this slide too, this is an 8,000 gallon family water bill. And I showed how much it would cost in 2022 to pay this bill, and then how much it would be in 2023 to pay this exact same bill with the new rates. And so it would cost this family $3.93 more per month. And that's an average of 3% more overall with that 3, 3, and 5% increase.
Just to add, we talked about this at our kind of our last work session, but the more that I think about it, we talked about it as a team. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to talk about water rates as it relates to usage and wanting to promote conservation. I was just in a meeting today where, tongue in cheek, but someone referenced, water, as being like gold in Carver. And I would add to that only becomes the case the more people use. If you look back to one of Lynn's previous slides, we're at 493 per thousand for, that first 5,000. It jumps up more than double once you're over, what's that, over 10,000 gallons. So from 481 to 962, and when, people are maybe using 30 to 40,000 gallons, like, yes, it is super expensive.
Right.
I think there's an opportunity for one, to promote conservation, but two, to say as an organization, as a city, we don't want you to use that. You're paying that, we don't want you to pay that much either.
Right.
You can use less, but it's a story of talking about that, identifying it, and then frankly, in the end, it helps us as a city not have to build as much infrastructure, because as you know, that the irrigation is causing us to plan for more capacity at the water treatment plant or a third well, and so some of this stuff just compounds on each other, and we've probably as a city have missed some opportunities to share that. We want you to use less. We don't want that to be your bill, and I think because we haven't done that collectively, and I'll take responsibility for that. There's maybe a narrative too much out there where we want that higher water bill, and I would say we don't want it. We don't, it's just causing things to compound where we need more to pay more debt for the new infrastructure to facilitate what amounts to be, an irrigation demand. We didn't add on to the water treatment plant to service, the fall and winter months. We added it to meet demand for summer irrigation. And I think there's a story to tell through a series of educational pieces and conversations.
Do we know what the average is for Carver? Like what the average household uses?
I don't know if we've done a calculation, because a lot of it, you don't know how many people are in a household.
Yep.
But I look at, if a typical family of 4 with a teenager that takes too long of showers, and we're at between 7,000 and 8,000 gallons a month if we don't water.
Could we see a pie chart that has tier 1, like how many, like what percentage of residents are in tier 1, what percentage of residents are in tier 2, tier 3, so we can kind of get that picture of where the city's landing?
Yeah, so let me add some context, and if you could reformulate your ask, so at least it makes sense to me. So when you use your charge at tier 1 at 5,000 gallons, and then you move to tier 2, and you charge at that, and then tier 3, so I'm not quite sure where you're.
I think you did the max, right?
Yeah, well, I would just like to see what percentage of our buildings, homes, whatever, land in tier 1. Like, are 10% of the people in tier 1?
I gotcha.
Are 20% of the people
The
in tier 2?
maximum
And the rest?
The maximum that they're using, right? So if they're hitting tier 2, they're
Yeah.
also paying tier 1.
Yeah,
They're
in
maxing
July.
tier 2.
Yeah.
In July or August. Oh, probably the time of year.
Yeah, so what, then,
Oh, that's true.
yeah.
Can you, and I was really saying for just like a yearly basis, like from Jan 1 to December, like, just so I can get a visual of what, I don't know if we can do that or not, but just I would like to know like where the majority of households are falling.
Yeah, we can,
Yeah, I can
I'm sure
I can do
it.
it.
It might be more meaningful to see it on a monthly basis, because then
You
you
wanna
can.
do that? That's
Yeah,
great,
I
too.
think so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
for sure.
Percentage of residents, right?
Guess it's a gallon tier. Perfect, okay. And again, here's where the city of Carver, 22 and 23 kind of fall in that pure city group that we compare ourselves to. So $126 and this is based on that 8,000 gallon per month consumption. I went and calculated that for these peer cities.
And we've talked about this as well, but I think it bears repeating. Each of these cities has its own infrastructure story.
Yeah.
Like Belle Plaine, Delano, and Jordan all operate their own wastewater treatment plant. And if you kind of follow that industry, right? Like every year they have like a new requirement for their phosphorus or some other type of treatment, and so they're almost on a consistent basis, like adding improvements to their wastewater facilities. So like that's why you'll see, without knowing the detail, I would be willing to bet that Belle Plaine, Delano, and Jordan have higher sanitary sewer fees and maybe their water fees are maybe more affordable depending on your perspective. And then you look at like Minnetrista, which is kind of a larger area, as a township that incorporated into a city, and so there's probably a lot of folks on well and septic, so it could be a concentrated area. Again, I think when we get developers in or residents and they start comparing, just like taxes, do you have a municipal liquor store? Do you have a municipal electric? Where's your wastewater treated? Each of them tells a story.
So why is Victoria so much lower?
I would say that it's probably based on where they're at in their infrastructure story. When's the last time they added to their water treatment plant? When they connected to the Metropolitan Council, the number of users they have Victoria's, I would say probably about double our size, and so they have that many more users, and if they have reached a point where they haven't had to add infrastructure and they are able to add users, their prices will seem more affordable. We'll reach that point. I mean, our prices won't go down. You'll not see any one of these have a reduction, but when Victoria maybe needs to add a second water treatment plant or build a third water tower, and we've already are just still paying on our current water treatment plant, that gap will close. It's kind of in the same way, the city of Chaska is looking at making a number of improvements to police, city hall, the rec center, and when they decide to do it, that gap between where our taxes are and their taxes are is gonna close a little bit. And then if we add an industry, and so like, depending upon how aggressive folks are with pavement management, or if they have another revenue source from franchise fees. I don't know the specific story of Victoria. I would also say, just based on, and Erin might be able to help because she was there for a bit, when we looked at their connection fees are $16,000. They're not connection, they have an area charge, they have a lateral connection benefit charge, and they have their actual connection fee, and so they might have a bigger ratio that's on the development than on the just day-to-day users. So,
Right, can you remind me what's our connection fee?
I think we
Here,
did
it's
on
on
this.
this slide.
Yeah.
Oh.
And some history on the city of
Okay,
Rockford,
got it.
they don't do any water treatment. They basically just go well water, they add fluoride and chlorine, and then it goes right into the tower. They don't have water filtration at all.
Okay, well, and I was curious too, because if, like, Minnetrista it's kind of rural in that area still, so and I know that there's a lot of, like, well and septic up there, is that a good demonstration of our peer cities, if they're so different from what we?
Well, we've had this list that we use. We can get other cities, but this is the list that we've used for other things, salaries and fire relief stuff. But I would say, there's sometimes they're not good, and
Right.
sometimes they are.
Well, and
And
if
this is a hard
overall,
one to apples to apples.
oh,
I
for
think.
sure it is. But if it makes sense overall to keep it as a peer city, when this specific example is so different from what we have, but if we use it in all the other things.
Right. So when I have that same thought when I think of like, well, Jordan Delano and Belle Plaine, you know, is Rockford on MCES, you know?
I'm not sure.
But, you know, at least Jordan Delano and Belle Plaine are connected to the Met Council, so like they're not really here in that regard, but, you know, when we also compare like some of these cities contract for police and some of them have their own police department, so like your taxes are impacted by that, so yeah, it's definitely more of an art than a science, I'd agree.
I guess that was the last slide.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, so next steps. City Council, I'm looking for feedback on what we saw tonight. I also attached to the presentation the enterprise fund budgets detailed. And then tonight, in the regular meeting, I'm going to be going over the long-term financial plan, which identifies the infrastructure and capital needs for, and the staffing needs for the next 5 years. Staff is working on the annual fee schedule. We'll be meeting in the next couple months and going over that, and that will be presented at a work session in November. And then the enterprise fund budgets are scheduled to be considered for adoption at the December 19th meeting. And that's all I have for that.
Any questions? Sorry. Jenny.
No, I had nothing.
All right. There aren't any questions? All right.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right. Up next, the 2023 Truth and Taxation Update. Ms. Shuey.
All right, so this is just a quick update. On something that everybody will be seeing along with their Truth and Taxation Statement. Carver County, along with the state of Minnesota, is requiring the supplemental budget information. And it is going to look like this. I just want to show you so that in case you have questions so that we all understand it. So it is required, and up in the kind of top section, it's going to have our levy information. So this is our total levy. It also has our 22 information so that we can compare, and then the percent increase. So here you'll see the 6.9% that we're at right now. So we did have to hand this in for our preliminary. So residents will get a preliminary, and then I believe they will get the final as well. So actually, the county is required to submit their information as well as the school district. So it's kind of providing transparency to residents and opening it up for questions. And I think it's encouraging people to just be more involved in where are your tax dollars going. And hopefully it will allow people to, ask more questions and just kind of know where their tax dollars go. So there is some restrictions here though. I just wanted to point out that they do have their own categories for expenditures and revenues. And so we just need to make sure that our expenditures are lumped into these categories. So they have general government, public safety, streets and highways, sanitation, human services, health, culture and rec, conservation of natural resources, economic development and housing, and all other current expenditures. And I have broken down where I put everything just so that you guys know where it all has gone. So in the state statute, they do have definitions for all of these if you want to read up on that. Here is the school district summary budget and what that will look like. So they are limited as well. Looks like they're gonna put their total funds and then some other information down here. But here is where I defined it for all of us. Here's our overall departments and how I kind of break out our expenses usually when I'm presenting it at a high level for everybody. And then over here on the right-hand side is where I lumped it into that category on that Truth and Taxation budget summary.
On that first page, percent is percent increase, right? And not percent of budget. Okay, that's tricky. I was reading it as percent of budget.
I know, because I was like, that doesn't add up.
I know, I was like,
33%.
math, 10
Yeah.
plus 10 plus 10.
This is their form, and it bothers me because there's no totals.
Right.
And when it was provided, they said make sure your percents calculate correctly, but there were no formulas in it either.
Ooh.
So,
So are you ready
Go.
for comments?
Yeah.
I love the transparency. I
Yeah.
think it's great.
Yeah.
I think this is really clearly like the A model of this, because I think it's also, it could be clearer. I think that people are gonna get a lot of questions, and I think it's a really good topic for my November newsletter article that I might have to phone a friend, Lynn, to help me write that, because I think that this is great, but they'll still be, the first page will still be, Courtney, this is what your taxes are, and it'll look like what I'm
Absolutely.
used to seeing. So this will be like page 2.
Mhm.
Yeah,
When we look at this, this makes it look like we're raising taxes 13.9%. So.
Our
But we,
This is
expenses are
just
still
my
going
sheet.
up 13.9.
no, this is you're not gonna get that.
Yeah, this is just
oh,
my
this is
sheet.
just yours.
Yeah, this
You
is,
Okay.
scroll to the page where
That
it
doesn't-
gets it out.
These are the
Okay.
buckets she put things in from what
Yeah.
Yeah,
our
sure.
department.
Cause I was looking at
But-
like, that's gonna,
But this too, Christy,
freak
this
people
makes
out.
it look like taxes are raising 7%,
Right.
6.9%.
right.
Which
And it
was
also
not what
looks
people
like
are gonna see.
we don't do anything for, like.
For health or human services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
or
don't as a
sanitation.
city.
But it's very specific in the code, Minnesota statute, that you can't, technically, we don't do anything for that because it's very
Right.
specific.
It's not city provided
Right.
sanitation, it's not city provided health, it's not city provided human
Right,
services.
so that's why I wanted to just point this out and how I coded everything, general government, economic development and housing, so.
Yeah, this is good transparency. The size of the budgets across this, right, are important to see as well as the change year over year. And I like that it's divided into the county and the school district because I feel like when people get their tax statement, they think it's 100% city and I'm coming to complain and it's, nope, that's county, nope, that's school district, here's our line, right? So this is a lot of great detail, I think, to give people a better picture of what their taxes are all about.
Yeah. Do we know how the county's gonna communicate this? Will there be, I feel like there needs to be a third page
Right?
describing.
I don't know, I can try and find that out for you though.
Okay, that would be great, because I
Absolutely.
think this needs more, because this is, again, really great to see in transparency, but it
Yeah.
could use some work.
Well, it's interesting, the county has the same bucket. The school district has interesting buckets.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know.
Exact same ones, yeah.
So,
Okay.
any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right.
No, I like it.
All right. Then we are on to the strategic plan update. Mr. Merrick.
Yeah, so the update is in your packet, Mayor and Council. Not a lot has changed, just finished up some items related to the employee survey. Was able to meet with all the departments on our action steps, and I have to say, like, probably one of the more encouraging and kind of uplifting things is to have conversations like that with the groups, and so realizing that it's an opportunity to do that a little bit more with the team, and so we're working on that. And then also kind of a piece just kind of as a commercial for going forward, as you see that a lot of the items have been kind of taken care of, getting you start to think about strategic planning in 2023 for the next 2 years. So if you have ideas and thoughts, to kind of jot those down, because we'll be trying to take that on early in the year as we do on a typical basis. So but happy to answer any questions on any call-outs or status updates on items.
Just based after our conversation about the water system and water and conservation, when will we be seeing drafts of that?
I connected with Aaron and Nicole. What was the last draft or next draft you think?
So right now, I'm kind of working on like the meat and potatoes of the content, I'll call it, for the actual, we have like the form of it done,
Okay.
like how we want to present it like visually. And then now Chad and I are developing the actual like major, content for it, so.
Did I hear you say by our first meeting in November?
Ooh, that might be
Likely not.
probably.
Okay.
Because they're gonna, no offense, but it's gonna sound like a bunch of engineering. So we're gonna have to.
Right, no,
So we
those
need to
words.
see the front version of it?
Right, we're gonna have to.
Okay,
Can you remind me under community development, the one that hasn't been started yet, the review sample building design regulations for commercial, I won't read the whole thing. Can you just remind me what, like what we're expecting or why that one's in there?
Like setting building materials for commercial buildings, so new construction, commercial, we would have a list of what it generally would need to look like on the outside.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have those regulations today.
We have them right now in the industrial district, I wanna say, but we should look at them.
And so it's a conversation too of, when you see examples, is that something you wanna get into now? So it's, you haven't committed to like doing them, but we've committed to researching the topic.
Researching it to see what we want to do.
Is that kind of typical in other cities that they have those regulations?
Cities that are seeing the amount of growth we have, yeah.
all right, any other questions?
Oh, I have a question on the infrastructure management one, anything on the, from the county on the County Road 40 turnback?
Yeah,
Or-
Aaron and Dan have been working on that. We're kind of, I would say, in the midst of kind of having conversations about all the intricacies that are going into it, so making pretty good progress.
Yeah, yep, we're making good progress. We've met with the county in person, just kind of working through the, kind of the costs right now, negotiating for that, so.
All right, city manager's report?
Thank you. I actually have a couple that I'd like to discuss. So the fire department's retirement is funded through the Relief Association, kind of a separate entity, and they're interested in joining para, which you're familiar with kind of the full-time employees, but para created an opportunity for fire reliefs to kind of be managed through their system, Public Employees Retirement Association, did I get that right? And so we've been having a series of meetings with them. The mayor and I are kind of ex officio members of their board, and so we've invited, they've had a meeting with their relief group. We've invited someone from para to come out to your work session in November just to talk about the program. We have some numbers on where our relief sits related to our peer cities. And so looking forward to a conversation on that, but I just kind of wanted to talk to you as a group to let you know that that's a conversation that'll be upcoming. Kind of makes me think that the year is kind of ending quickly, but the team is working on the 2023 schedule for next year. And something popped out, just wanted to kind of throw it out there. So our first meeting in July is July 3rd. The 4th will be on a Tuesday. Wondering if so kind of two pieces to that. One, wondering if the council, just based on kind of our attendance and kind of the regular meeting cadence that we have, you'd be interested in not holding a meeting on that first Monday in July. And then the second piece to that I am waiting to get some feedback from the union on is kind of based on where the council sits, wanting their feedback on exchanging paid holidays and giving them the July 3rd as a holiday in exchange for them working on President's Day. So they have a 4-day weekend, but some of that is based on if the council wants to meet on the 3rd, then we probably wouldn't move forward with that conversation with the union because we'd have folks here to staff the meeting, etc. So I just wanted to see how the council felt about all that.
I'm fine with canceling the meeting and I'm fine with doing the exchange of holidays. It makes sense.
Same, I think you're really good about knowing 6 months out, you can
Yeah.
schedule around that, and
Yeah.
if there's an emergency need, we
Even
can
know
meet
what
the
my
week
dates
before or after.
Concur.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Dramatic.
I don't even,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even know what my company is gonna be doing about that holiday, so they're really proactive, so whatever.
Well, thanks to Natalie, because she was
Yes.
already working on it,
Yeah.
so. So we finished up, September 30th was the last day folks could file out claims for our pressure reducing piece, so we'll be, or then we'll be kind of working on kind of a summary report to give to the council sometime before the end of the year. One of the things that we had talked about kind of in concert with that was, you know, there was a building code change that required pressure reducing valves at probably some point in the, you know, we have that year?
I don't know what date it was.
Some point in the last 20 years, and so we had talked about at one point kind of in this type of forum, would the city create some type of PRV rebate program as a, you know, the case that we had were on 2 separate occasions, but if there are, it was kind of looked upon at the time as maybe a strategy to avoid it altogether, if based on any reason that might be coming up. Well, we've done some analysis through Aaron's help in the engineer's office, and we have about 180 homes, that, I got the number right there, right? Or 300 homes,
300 homes.
sorry, 300 homes that could potentially qualify based on some like skeleton program elements that we put together. And at that,
Is it based like on their location?
based on their
Or just the
location,
history
and
that we have?
right, and we'd have to go through another analysis to see what the age of their home was, because if it was after a certain build date, then they probably already have a PRV. But at the end of the day, we're, you know, based on the math of like $600 per PRV valve, you know, we're probably looking in the neighborhood of like $150,000 to $200,000, and it could be rolling depending upon different circumstances. And so like it's quite a bit more than what at first when we were looking at this we thought, oh, this could be like a handful of properties. We could put something together and kind of put some belt and suspenders on this. But when we're starting to talk about that kind of figure, I just wanted to check in with the council to see if you wanted to keep pursuing this. This would be kind of its like first of its kind policy that or rebate program that we're aware of. And so if we're kind of forging new ground here, just wanted to make sure that you're still comfortable with those dynamics at play.
That gets paid for through the water fund, Chris, and it's not budgeted in there.
No, we'd have to, at that amount, we'd have to include it in our next year's long-term financial plan.
And the only reason really to do this is so that we don't have water, if we have another water event like this, that we don't make this happen again.
I think at the time, like, that's been kind of a rolling conversation at the time. You know, we had those 2 events based on those specific reasons. And it just, from my recollection and talking about it, it's like, well, if we have other people that are in high pressure, it just feels like there's not a lot of wiggle room if something does happen. And so like, if we can get people to put PRV valves in to like provide some extra bandwidth or space, that'd be in everyone's best interest, because, you know, as we know the story, like we had those 2 incidents, we were found not to be liable, and then the council went ahead and paid those. But there'll be a conversation at some point in the future, and we've frankly had some where people have had pressure pieces, but they weren't linked to city issues. They weren't on the day, they're not in the pressure zone, etc. And so we've told them, well, you're not eligible. Well, that, so the thought process at the time was, well, we could offer this rebate program for them to install it, to kind of, I would say, like, help with the conversation. Like, we can't do this, but we can do this. So that's kind of a story of how we got here.
Is the rebate to pay for all of it or more of like a subsidized?
It's all of it.
Pay for all of it?
Yeah. And again, like, if you need some time to think about it, I just wanted to kind of like, we're starting to get into we're gonna start to put in some major time in this. And if you're like, yeah, we wanna look at it, finish it off and present it to us, or if you're like, that's beyond the scope that I was thinking, park it, doesn't mean we can't go back to it, but park it for now, then we'd do that. But we're at a point now where it's like, in order for us to finish it, we'll have to put in quite a bit of time with Bolton and Mink and Dave Anderson and our team to get it to a point where it's at least practical for you to consider by legally, you know, process-wise, you know, that kind of thing.
Do we know why the state law was changed about the valves in the first place?
I don't, but we could find that out.
That would be helpful to kind of understand. I mean, because, 300 homes is not an insignificant amount. And it would be helpful to kind of understand the reason for those or why the laws changed. And also, is there something unique about our topography here in Carver that just leads homeowners to have different varying pressure situations?
Do you know the
That-
answer to that, Aaron?
So,
I'm trying to understand why we as a city would do this versus others. I don't know.
so the way the system's laid out, as everybody knows at this table, there's 3 pressure zones, right?
Yeah.
So when the original system was laid out, there's, the elevation difference for each water tower and then like the low part of the city. The pressures that you're seeing are basically just a result of how the original system was put together. And this could have been, before there was any like design guidelines for like, you don't want to get over 100 PSI in your distribution mains, right? So like current engineering design standards indicate, you don't want to get over 100 PSI. If that is the case, you either need to put a PRV in your mains or the individual home should have PRVs on them. So that's something, it would be a bigger like overall effort to kind of restructure our whole distribution system to make it more, make it less pressure system-wide in these various locations. So I don't know if that kind of answer your question or.
Yeah, kind of. So it tells me that we have a water system that was designed many years ago, maybe for some of those standards, and that's what makes this situation a little unique, right? It's with homes that are connected more on that older side of the infrastructure design versus anything new is not gonna have this issue.
Yeah, and all the new homes, if they are over, so the new universal building code is, if you're over 80 PSI, then you put them in the home as part of just your,
No standard
permit.
design.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so that helps me understand sort of the unique situation of why the city might feel it important to provide that kind of rebate.
So we're really trying to incentivize these homeowners to do this so that we don't have a problem like we just had. I mean, really, that's the gist of this, right? Is that we don't,
We want to mitigate the risk to the
yeah,
homeowner.
is that we don't end up wanting to have the same thing that just happened, where we're looking at payments back and stuff like that.
Right, it's, yes.
Yes.
It's a little bit more than what I was thinking. Like, I'd like some time to think about it. I wonder too, I think we'd probably have to offer the full rebate for folks to take advantage of it. But we could also do a sliding scale in like the, the ratio program where we give a certain discount. Although this is pretty expensive, so I don't know if we say $100 off a $600 bill that people would be super excited about it, but,
I don't think
I'd like
so,
to
I think
table
it'd
it
have to
for
be at
time
least
being.
half, you know what I mean? And then you have to kind of figure out what half really looks like. Is it 600 or is it 400? Is it, But I agree, I understand the incentive to do it, but that's a lot. I mean, 300 homes, that is quite a bit of money.
And will replacing our pressure relief valves mitigate the risk to some extent? Is the
So-
budget for next year?
replacing ours, you're still gonna have static pressures in your system that are over 100 PSI in some areas. That doesn't do anything for that, it just mitigates the risk of a failure happening at your PRV in your system.
Okay.
And just one thing I do wanna clarify is, so the 300 homes, that was literally my first cut at looking at just static pressures in your system based on your elevation difference. Any property that would have a pressure of 100 PSI or greater. So as Brent alluded to, maybe we could eliminate a whole neighborhood that is a newer neighborhood that might already have those individuals in the home.
Sure.
But that's kind of the point we're at, is we need to either dig into it further or get other direction.
So do I hear you
Council.
saying 300 is the ceiling
That's
number?
the ceiling.
Okay, okay.
I feel like I'm hearing some curiosity and some.
Yes,
Yeah.
We-
yes,
We
please.
can at
I'd
least
like to
finish
hear
the
some-
research and give you some different options on level of subsidy, you know, maybe it's 50%, here's.
Yeah, if you could give us like, nail down numbers of how many homes.
Yeah, but knowing that some of that 300 is probably already has been installed, 'cause I guess I didn't catch that it was, you were just hitting whoever has that pressure
Mhm.
number. So that could bring that down.
Quite a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, for sure.
Maybe, yeah. We just don't know, we
Right.
just gotta look at it now.
Because then if that was a lower number, then I think I would be more inclined to do the full rebate
Yeah, it'd just be done.
and just be done with it.
Would the city go and install them themselves, or this would be
We've talked about having the homeowner contracting with a plumber to do it, and then they'd submit an invoice and we'd
Okay.
I think that would be safer in the city than having our own folks go in and
yeah.
install something and then if something did
Yeah.
happen, now we're on.
But we'd have to inspect it, you know, we
Right.
get into those details, but.
Okay.
Do you think 50% of eligible folks, do you have any frame of reference to guesstimate how many folks would take us up on that offer?
This is really brand new, so we'd have to.
Okay. I'm just curious, because you know, it's not gonna be 100%, but if it's free and helps you, you think it would be pretty high?
Yeah, I think it'd be high.
All right, and then I got, so one last thing, well, if you wanna bear with me, it's a longer story, so
You have 4 minutes.
Lightning round.
So, the way that the city, so we were talking a lot about fees, so the way that we do our connection fees is kind of a long process, but it amounts to be when especially for a commercial business, they'll submit a floor plan to the Met Council, and based on the type of use, they get us what's called a SAC determination. And for a home, it's pretty simple, it's always gonna be, one SAC. And then we, as a city, then charge our own local connection fees. So we have that 8,900 for water and about the 900 for sewer. And that's, been a standard. And it's pretty tongue and groove for residential. On commercial, the same thing applies, but it, based on the footage, the type of use. And then we make that same type of calculation and give them the fees they're charged at building permit. We're working with a prospective business in Carver, and they're concerned about the city's methodology, are asking us to do some research and reconsider it. So for example, let's just say, their new business has to get 10 SAC units from the Met Council. Our current process that we use for residential and commercial is they get charged 10 SAC units to the city, so 10 water connection charges and 10 sewer connection charges on top of what they pay to sanitary, or what they pay to the Met Council. They're having problems with, one, the cost, and two, the kind of the methodology. And in certain circles, the Met Council has come under some scrutiny of how they do their methodology. But and I've already kind of reached out to some friends and colleagues in other cities, asking them what do they do. But the ask of this prospective business is for the city to do some research and reconsider a methodology that's different than just using the Met Council. And so that's somewhat complex in that it's not just different fees, but we all know now how that integrates into the long-term financial plan. And then, at some point, there's a start and stop to everything, but when that changes, what that does to businesses that have just jumped into development of pay charges, and then going forward into the future and being equitable and consistent and fair. So that's kind of one bucket, and then the second bucket, which we've done in different circumstances, namely the 2019 assessment project. We've assessed the city's portion of the water and sewer connection charges over a period of time, and so they paid the upfront Met Council charges, and then we've assessed the balance, and they're likely going to request that the city assess their city connection charges. So we're going to be working on a process to get that in front of you at your October 17th meeting. But I'm really trying to do a temperature check on the methodology that I talked to kind of at the front end about, whatever the Met Council determines for their SAC charge is what we apply to water and sewer. If you support staff kind of digging into that and looking at other policies and examples that maybe other cities are using that we're not familiar with.
I'm always for more information. I mean, I'm always for looking into it and seeing what others are doing and seeing if we're right on track or if there's something that we can change or we want to change or maybe, whatever it turns out to be.
I think the repercussions towards how we do our budgets and all of our fee schedules, I think that it would be an absolute nightmare for the staff to dive into it and start doing all the recalculations and everything. This is being brought by somebody who's questioning why we do what we do and not accepting that this is how we do it. This is how many cities do it. They're gonna get sack and wax wherever they go. So they're questioning our methodology on how we do it instead of, well, they're going to get it other places as well. I don't see the need for us, this is what we do. This is how we charge our hookup fees. Every city has their ways that they do it. I don't see that we need to do all the research and dive into this, spending all the time for people that don't like the way the process works.
I would still like to look into it. I don't know that I've ever revisited this, like our methodology, and I just think all the cities do it pretty much the same, and like as far as a source of truth, that kind of thing. We look at what Met Council, so I'm definitely for learning more about it, but I know it's not like a immediate change, and we're already making decisions for next year's budget, so it isn't something that I would think, oh, when we meet again in 2 weeks. But yeah, just as I learning more on how we have the different fees, and
Right.
Not just connection fees, but for any of them, that we are always open to reevaluating how we come up with them, but don't see that as something that would
And there'll
quickly
be,
change.
you make a good point of maybe think of like, there are some cities that aren't connected to the Met Council system. And so they're not using the SAC determination. I already heard from some
Interesting.
the former city administrator in Watertown that told me that Watertown has kind of their own system for calculating pieces. But so there's at least one example that we probably have some firsthand knowledge of here. So
I don't mind doing the benchmarking of our methodology to other cities that are connected to Met Council, just to have the benchmark. It gives me a lot of heartburn to change our methodology because of the impact of budgets, equity, a lot of things. I'm not super interested in looking at changing the methodology, but benchmarking it is fine, just so that we can say all the other cities do it very similar to us.
Yeah, and I want to take a look too. I have the same concerns about, if we say to one, sure, we'll work with you. We're going to hear from folks. Wait. I mean,
Everybody,
back to
period.
Lori Osterdyke will come knocking, so some big time concerns about that. That said, I don't necessarily, I'm open to see how other cities do it, and I would like to see if we have the opportunity to see what else is being done out there. Maybe there is something that would provide less of a barrier to entry, if that's truly what this is becoming.
And I agree, this is really, to take a look at benchmark to say, okay, yep, we're pretty close on track here. Or if it comes back and, ooh, we're really, really off. Now, why are we really, really off?
Right.
So I think that would be helpful for me to see. And I'm not, again, when we're talking about, we know that this has come up because of a specific project that's happening right now. I don't think it's bad to get that information to say this is right on. Again, the budgets we're in the process for our budgets right now. A process if we were to look at this and say, oh, we, you know, maybe there's a change that's coming, it's not gonna be overnight. I don't expect that this is gonna come flying
know.
through and somehow in 2 weeks,
There's no way.
yeah. You know what I mean?
There's no
So
way.
I just,
Yeah.
I'd be lucky to
Yeah.
happen in 8 months, 10
Yeah.
months.
Realizing we have 5 minutes, I just wanna, what Joy said, I agree. I think for this, we really need to focus on Met Council communities.
Yeah.
To make sure that we try to, and I know I've seen what you've shared already, and maybe you can get that to the rest of the council, or I think you did get that to the rest of the council. But there are so many variables, even when you take Met Council out of it of being a variable.
I'd
I
like
wanna
to
make
know
sure
if
that-
they're charging franchise fees as well.
And I had one more thing, but I lost it. Anyways, maybe I'll think about it.
So,
All right, with that, we've got about 4 minutes between meetings. I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm
So
sorry, are you done? Okay. We got a motion by Councilmember Henry.
Second.
And a second by Councilmember Knight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.